This is great. All right. So, everybody, I am here with Jim Wilson. I'm so excited to talk to Jim, who is a first time author of a book called Tuned In. And he's joining me today on my Storytime with Writers, where we like to have conversations about the craft of writing, about the creative life, challenges, storytelling, becoming authors, whatever that looks like for you. And so, Jim, I have to tell you that I think I said this in my promo on my Facebook page that your book was my favorite assignment of last year.
Great.
I don't know if I told you that before, but you know, I tend to get I tend to edit a lot of memoirs,
Right.
sort of my lane, you know. And so in that lane, there's this thing that sometimes editors talk about called the misery memoir, right?
Right.
Which is, of course, you know, people go through something very challenging, whether it's an illness or near death or, you know, just, you know, something that would inspire you to write a memoir, as
Right.
I did, which is what
Yeah.
my memoir came out of. And so it makes perfect sense, but I was reading a lot of them and they were
Yeah.
very, very heavy. You know,
Right.
there was one about a serial killer and there was a lot of
Right.
death and losing children
Right.
and it was really getting to me after, you know, I kind of felt like I needed a break. And then your book came along and oh my gosh, I said immediately to Alex, the managing editor, I was like, I need more Jim Wilson. Like Jim Wilson has become
That's
the
so
bar.
kind.
I need more
Yeah.
of these books because it was such a delight to read it. It just the stories and the writing was so well done. And you know, of course, you've got these anecdotes from your long career in music, and it was just a breath of fresh air. So you know that was one of the things that I wanted to ask you about because so many authors do write these darker,
Right.
heavier
Yeah.
memoirs. And like in my case, you know, my memoir is about a spiritual journey through divorce.
Buddha
I
at the
think it's
table.
about the Buddha at my table. Yeah, I think it's about a lot of things, not just divorce, but for me, it's always been tricky to want to spend a lot of time promoting it because it means going back into the past and
Right.
retelling those stories and sort of revisiting that heaviness. And I thought, what's it like to be Jim Wilson, where you have a lot of happy memories to share? You've got these amazing stories. So what does that feel like? And now that your book's out.
Well, actually, a great place to jump in with all of this is what you kind of touched on, which is finding that balance of bleeding. You have to put, who was it, Hemingway who said it's easy to write? You just open a vein and bleed or something like that.
Right,
Was that it?
right.
So there's that balance of you want to bleed, want to leave blood on the page, but you don't want to leave vomit on the page. So there's that there's that balance. I struggle with that. How much do I share? How much is oversharing? And people are drawn in when you reveal your humanity. In other words, if I'm willing to kind of be open and vulnerable and share these things that maybe I'm not proud of. I talked in the book about, unwittingly burning down my dad's stables when I was a kid, and man, that was really it's a hard thing to revisit because it's, really messed up his world. And but I knew that those kind of things and revealing my getting caught up in sort of the Hollywood stuff and my identity glomming on to that and me losing my true purpose, that some of that stuff is not easy to talk about, but you have to be willing to reveal your humanity as a writer. And then you go, okay, well, where's that line? How much of this is serving the narrative and how much of it is just like, oh God, I don't need to be sitting in on your therapy session. So,
Right.
it's a fine line. But to begin the whole process for me, which I think we're talking about the writing process, uh, around the beginning of the pandemic, I thought, okay, well, I have no more excuses. I need to start putting some of these stories on paper. And because I've had some, as a piano technician, and I've had some extraordinary experiences of getting to sit on the same piano bench as Paul McCartney, singing Beatles songs, and limo rides with Elton John, and horseback riding with my hero, Dan Fogelberg, singer-songwriter, and getting him to be a pal, and he became a big champion in my work. And then road trip with Carole King, and just some extraordinary experiences. So I started cobbling these things together. And in the process of it, I realized, well, it's really kind of a much bigger narrative of who I became in the process of pursuing my artistic aspirations. So I decided I want to get really serious about it. I studied the craft of writing. The structure of my memoir is more along the lines of a novel, in terms of
Right.
act one, two, and three. And then here's the inciting incident and just point of no return. And then I learned about, world building. And as I'm sure you tell all your students, rule number one, show, don't tell, right? Rule number
It's
one.
interesting. Yeah. So you're taking your real life events, but you took the time to understand a story, the foundation, the elements of a story, how to put it together in the
Right.
right way so that you do have a transformational arc.
Yes.
And I should mention too, you do talk about losing your brother, which is,
Yeah.
I'm sure, a very pivotal, painful event. And I thought that was an amazing choice because you're not just keeping it with this small, you're just you as the musician. Like you
Yeah.
said, you were opening it up to bring in what formed you, what was important to you, so that we really connected with
Right.
you and cared about your journey. So a lot of people, I think, want to kind of parse it into, well, this is the story I'm writing, and it doesn't include this piece of me. But you didn't do that. You
Right.
you brought
Well,
in the things you
ultimately,
needed.
that became the barometer.
Yeah.
Does this serve the narrative or does it not? And then you go, okay, well then what exactly is the narrative arc? And the narrative being that here's this kid emerging from a broken home in West Texas and had these dreams
Right.
of making it in the music business, and then it became apparent that a great I got this great idea of, wow, I could see these guys tuning pianos, and that was a great way to go off and make 25 bucks. And I thought, well, I can learn to do that, whatever they did. And so
Right.
piano tuning was going to be a means to this end. And the narrative of my journey is moves to LA and to become the next Jackson Brown, and instead became the next Jackson Brown piano tuner.
Yeah.
And so this craft that I had learned became this vehicle for getting to know all these amazing artists, tuning for Quincy Jones and Lionel Richie and Barbra Streisand and all these titans. And then my identity kind of got wrapped up in that. And then, as you said, the death of my brother, and then even the big second of the 1-2 punch was the loss of my closest friend at the age of
Yeah.
37 of a heart attack, that was the thing
Yeah.
that just made me realize, Jesus, this thing is, there's no guarantees of anything. So whatever it is you want to do, get the hell on with it. And that was the catalyst for me to get on with my dreams and honestly reevaluate my dreams. It's like, okay, this singer-songwriter thing, that's not quite true for me anymore. So I had to kind of rethink everything. And well, if I got that little tap on the shoulder like my friend Claude did at the age of 37,
Yeah.
what is it that I would want to leave behind? And these in between trying to write the next big hit song, I would kind of entertain myself with sitting at the piano and just coming up with these ideas that amused me. And oh, I sure do like it when I do this little pattern in B minor and then go to the sharp five, and no one's going to hear this, but wow, it just brings so much joy. And I was at Dan Fogelberg's ranch, and it was one of our late night visits, and I played one of these pieces for him, and he said, "God, that's beautiful. What is that?" I said, "Oh, just a little thing I'm working on." And play it again, and he said, "Maybe I could write a lyric to that." I'm thinking, "Oh my God,
Wow.
sure." So I said, "Well, the only problem with that is there's this little B section, and the melody is being carried in the bass. It would need a another counter melody to hang a lyric on. He said, we'll play it again. And then boom, right out of the gate, he sang this perfect counter melody, which became the uilleann pipe melody that you hear on Northern Seascape, which is my debut record.
Oh,
So
nice.
that first record, there was some kind of fairy dust on that because, like I said, I was only doing it for my own pleasure,
Mm,
and isn't it ironic that the things that we do that for our own spiritual nourishment, and this is not for public, well, those are the things that those intimate um, offerings are the things that define you as an artist. And
I
so,
love that. I love
yeah.
that. That's what we talked about last week with Lincoln Rogers, my guest, and who's also my son. And
Hmm,
he had advised me going through grief, losing my mother
right.
recently. He said, create art just for you.
That's it.
And it just was such a breath of fresh air. And I thought, he said, don't stop worrying about right now what you're going to do to make money or to promote this or to do that. Just have fun and write something that speaks to you. And I did that. And
Yeah.
so I love that you're echoing that same idea.
That's exactly right. It was it's when you stop thinking about, well, what about, the original dream was to hit songwriter and try to find the right structure, that's the catchy pop chorus and all that.
Yeah.
Just stop thinking about that and just do, God, these things that I'm creating for my own amusement, they speak more truly to who I am as an artist. And, here I am 10 albums later and four times on the Billboard Top 20 and 75 million streams of my music and two PBS specials. And it's all kind of because I had to get that wake up call of my friend passing away. It's like, okay, this could be over at any second.
Yeah.
What is it that is true to you? And it wasn't about writing some catchy pop song. And hats off to the writers who can do that, sit in a room and come up with the next big hit. But
Yeah.
that ain't me.
And
So
now you've added a book to
yeah.
that list of things now. And so how does that feel? And what part of it are you enjoying the most of becoming an author?
Um, well, the whole thing has been very revelatory, and if you're gonna write a good memoir, you need to dig deep and you need to leave blood on the pages, as we just said. So in that process of like learning structure, all of it, just the mechanics of writing, and I have to give props to my mom, who is quite the polyglot. She spoke seven languages and taught five, and Latin and French and Spanish and English, and
Wow.
she was my consigliere on all things writer, and she was like my human Grammarly app, and she would consult and advise me on and correct me and on improper use of the language, and she would read writings that I had and
I
lyrics
love
to
that.
stories, and so I had that kind of baked in early on. And then as I began writing these stories, and it's just a bit like the little thread that you pull on your sweater, oh, this, and then eventually the whole sweater
Yeah.
unravels.
Yeah.
It was a long journey. Here's 4 years later, and it's so gratifying when you finally get that blueprint done, and okay, this is where the whole thing is, act one, two, and three. This is a chapter. No, this one should break down into two chapters. And when it all starts taking shape, and then you can start breaking out the polishing,
Yeah.
and I liken it, when I'm making a record, you hold these 10 songs in your head and go, okay, uh what is the what's the best way to what's this mix that I should do here? This tambourine's too hot. Well, it's a bit like holding 10 albums in your head at one point, 86,000 words,
Yeah.
being held in RAM. And it's a long process.
Would you call yourself a storyteller when it comes to your music, or do you think that's reserved for the written word?
Um, I would all of it, you know. I would hope that the individual songs are stand alone as the story, but
Yeah.
yes, they're definitely related. And I think of each piece that I compose as kind of a little mini story, and hopefully takes you on a journey. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of doing the instrumental form that I've done. It's you are the arbiter of taste, and it's a per your guidelines, and it's so freeing. And I love creating music, and the fact that it's created value in some people's lives is extremely gratifying to me.
Yeah. What's next for you then? What's the next part of your story? And if you have one of your books there too, you need to show us. I wish I had. I've
Oh,
ordered one,
how
but I don't
funny
have
you
it
should
yet.
say that. Oh my goodness. Why, here's one
Of
now.
course.
This just
Yep.
in.
Fabulous. Is that a hardcover?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
almost like a real
That's impressive.
professional. Yeah.
Yeah, looks great. Yeah. So yeah, leave us with your what's next for you, and if this is a story, like what can we look forward to?
Well,
You have
the
something in mind?
one thing at a time, please. My
Yes.
book comes out on April 2nd on wherever books are sold digitally. It's on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, and all that. April 2nd, and you know, it's been a hell of a journey. And right now, this is the only thing that's on my agenda, is making sure that this baby gets reaches the widest possible audience. Besides being
Yeah.
a fun memoir about fun stories about, you know, sitting on the same piano bench as Paul McCartney singing a Beatles song, this magical 4 hour hang that ended with him saying, "Anytime you're in the UK, just give us a bell," which I did. I went to his Hummer studio a dozen times, and so there's the fun stories about, you know, behind the scenes with music legends, but there's also the bigger narrative of me kind of discovering my path as an artist, and that's the part that I hope is of service to people and inspiration to people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely, I can echo that having read it. I will say it's not just a strung together collection of anecdotes, which would be fun and is
Mhm.
fun. It's more than that. I do
Yeah,
think you did a great job of diving deep and really giving us a sense of who you are and where you came from and why music is important to you. Like I
yeah.
said, letting us care about the journey because we cared about you. So
Thank you.
yeah, well done. I'm excited for you. It was great to have a chance to read it. And yeah, April 2nd, everybody go buy it.
Great. Thank you so much for having
Order
me,
it
Jen.
now. Yeah, thanks, Jim. It was really nice
Lovely.
to talk to you, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for having me. Yeah,
Take
bye-bye.
care.